webinar three parts. The first part is today, that is 17th July. Second part will be on 20th July. And today, what we are looking for will be having is geometric technology and trends. The part two will be applications of geomatics in land learning. And part three will be on 22nd July. That is application of geomatics in hydrogeology. Our speaker guest is Dr. Nirjal. I'll request our principal sir to Dr. Nirjal Lakhia. Hello. Principal sir, Salesh Nair sir.
Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, I am inside my office. I'm in a site actually. So,
okay.
See, our college has been conducting this webinar on various topics. So we have finished our earlier series of digital architectural products, then heritage and conservation. So now we have come up with this series of geomatics. So on behalf of College of Architecture, let me welcome Dr. Nirjal. Welcome, sir, for today's webinar. And I hope this webinar will be very interesting and it will be very useful for the coming planning and architecture students. So, welcome, sir. So I request Taha to please play the video of our college.
Thank you, sir.
Afterwards, we'll start with the session. And I also welcome all the participants who have joined this webinar.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir, you can start.
Okay.
Once again, I'll welcome you, all of you. This College of Architecture, SVIT Vasad, is a college which started 20 years ago in year 2000. We have been now introducing new courses. That is, Bachelor of Interior Designing course has also been introduced, and in architecture will be our next and Mr. Dr. Nirjal Lakhia. Dr. Nirjal Lakhia is a doctorate in field of application of geomatics in artificial groundwork recharge structures. He has obtained a double MA degree in field of geology and applied geology from Gujarat University, MS University, respectively. Realizing the importance of geomatics current field of work, he has decided to go for further studies and completed his PhD in geomatics in hazard and risk analysis, IIRS, Indian Institute of Remote Sensing, Dehradun. Further he went to pursue PhD at MSc University, Baroda under Dr. Bindu Bhatt. I would like to brief up few things in GIS before Dr. Nirjal Lakia takes the lecture. As you all know, that is lecture will be geomatics and technology and trends. Myself, Professor Ashwin Mukul at College of Architecture, IIT Vasad, has also completed course in GIS. So, and both of us were meeting often because he is a professional in GIS and I was studying GIS. And that's how today I felt that it was nice to call him. I think so. I'll hand over the mic to Dr. Nirjal Lakia and take the platform. Yes, Dr. Nirjal Lakia, please come.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. First of all, thank you, Ashwin Ashwin sir and Taha sir for inviting me for this lecture series. Today we are going to talk on the topic something which is a very growing field of geomatics. Relatively a new field, but a vastly growing, and it's taking a mainstream now. Almost all of our disciplines are getting interconnected with geospatial technology, right? First of all, share my.
Yes. You share your screen.
It's visible, right?
Not yet.
Hello.
Yes, now it is.
Yeah. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes. Yes, you are audible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hello. You're audible.
I'm not getting a voice. Much audio.
Yes, you are audible. Yes, sir.
I'm not getting a voice. In case that, yeah, I'll continue with the lecture then. Yeah. So.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So as we all know, today's topic is geomatics. What is geomatics first of all? So geomatics basically is collection of the data, storage of the data, doing some kind of an analysis, processing the data, right? Something which we all do in our daily life, right? Through our brains. This is something which we do through software or through technology, right? So it has different terms basically. Earlier it was widely known as geoinformatics, and then it was brought down to geomatics. It's kind of an ISO approved term now. It's same as a geospatial technology, right? It has different terms though. So what it comprises of generally is three major disciplines, rather four now, if we include softwares. That is GIS, that is called Geographical Information System. Then Global Navigation Satellite System, widely known as GPS. And remote sensing systems. We'll try to understand what are all the four parts of geomatics. So we'll start with GIS now. What is GIS? GIS basically links non-spatial data to a spatial data. The main components of GIS are software, hardware, data, methodology, that we use and the institution or we the people, right? These are the five major components of GIS. So now to understand GIS in a simple form, uh, it basically has input, storage, analysis, and output, as we had already mentioned earlier. Now, suppose we have to take a daily decision on our some kind of a routine case, or like house purchase, office, businesses, right? We all have some kind of a decisions to take, right? So how do we generally go about all those things, right? Suppose we have to purchase a office, or we have to plan something, right, for that area. So how do we go about it? First of all, we'll try to locate that area, locations, whether the routes are feasible or not, what are the good timings to go there, and likewise. Then we store such kind of a data, right? Like to get the inputs, whether it's feasible in terms of monetary, right? So we try to get the current schemes, rates of localities, bus routes, market, etc., to do the analysis, and then finally we come to a decision that that some area that fits my budget, or the locality, the residence is good, or the office area is good, or the lakes are there, gardens are there, environment is good, and then finally, based on all this economical, geographical, the rational thinkings, transportation and routes and all, we come to a decision. Here we have done nothing but we have interconnected or linked spatial locations, like locations, transportations, area, to non-spatial attribute, like money and amenities that are there, and we have taken a decision that okay, this area might be good for my residence or office or business. And same thing that we do on our daily basis is done by a geographical information system. So it's as simple as that. But only thing is that when we do take such kind of a decisions, our decisions are implemented straight away, and our brain acts as a supercomputer. In here, our outputs are rather different. It usually aids in our decision, right? Aids in a way that initially you can have a tabular format as our traditional form that you might be doing during some kind of other analysis, like in Excel or MS Access or so. Then you can have bar charts, pie charts. That's another form of display, how we try to understand the situations. Then comes the GIS part, that which is not possible through a traditional mapping system or analysis system. Rather, that is that we can display all those spatial or attribute informations and represent it in a form of a map, right? And we can also geotag all these informations through a photographs. So those are all possible through this technology of GIS. So if we go little further now, since I know that you are landscape architects and planners, you might be more interested in a planning portion or designing portion. So these simple maps can be converted into a smart maps by linking all those other informations that we can collect about land, environment, daily commutations, streets, other land parcels, and we can actually have a you can say virtual reality kind of a thing. So you can easily, as this slide shows, that you can easily sync or integrate or superimpose all those layers, right? So this is something that you can do through GIS. So this I just kept an image from a net to bring your interest that what all is possible in GIS. Now this is a larger scale of a planning, right? So this is all that you can do through a GIS or a geospatial technology. Only thing that is different from about these maps than the other maps is that these are all geospatially tagged. So these are real-time coordinates. This is not just a fancy picture or a 3D model generated by some kind of a software, but these are real coordinates that you actually can use for your analysis. So this is something which can be done through geospatial technologies. So now, since you are planners and architect, I believe everyone has used AutoCAD. Am I correct? For most of you. So now, after these few slides that I have shown you, can anyone give me a difference between what of how GIS are different, or how CAD is related to this, right? So I may not be able to get your chats. I believe I'll just give you some 5-10 seconds to I give you the difference between your traditional AutoCAD system or CAD systems and GIS. I suppose within these few seconds, people might have figured out. So generally, your CAD systems, the traditional CAD systems used to work on an arbitrary coordinates. You know, they just used to assume 0, 0 as one axis, and then used to scale the map and try to digitize and prepare a cartographic model where the text are grown integrated the GIS kind of systems in it. There are some versions of CAP which also is trying to come up to the level of GIS, but GIS is basically specifically meant for not cartography purpose like what your CAD systems are, but then mapping and relating all those maps in national grid systems analysis in GIS, which is very good for planners. Another thing which is advantageous with terms of geospatial technologies, handling of satellite images or heavy images, which CAD systems generally take a lot of time in rendering. GIS systems, I mean, does it probably in half or less than half the time of what CAD systems can handle the photos or satellite images. So that are few advantages of the GIS system over traditional CAD software that you are using. So this in general was about GIS, that from where we can do the analysis. Now we'll talk something about remote sensing, right? What is remote sensing? What do you understand by remote sensing, right? What do you understand by remote sensing? Like remote, remote, be controlled from a remote place. That is the idea, right? In definition, it's just a science and art of obtaining useful information about an object, area, or phenomena through the analysis of a data acquired by a device that is not in contact with that object, area, or phenomena under investigation. So basically, remotely, if we can gather some kind of an information, we call it a remote sensing. So as humans, we also has some kind of a senses, right? At least like 5 that we all know. Which are they? That touch, smell, hearing, vision, and taste. Now, can anyone tell me which senses can we consider as remote sensing in general? Which can we relate out of these 5 senses, which can we relate with remote sensing and which not? You can type down your answers. I'll just give you some few seconds for that. Touch, can we consider as remote sensing? The first photo, I suppose my cursor is visible, right? The first photo where there is a hand touching a baby's leg, that's touch. It cannot be called as remote sensor because we are in physical touch with it, right? Smell, in a sense we can smell it, right? And no. Hearing, we can hear from distance. Vision, we can see from a distance. And taste, again we have to touch some food in our tongue, taste buds. So what do you call as remote sensing and what not? In general, touch and taste will not come into remote sensing categories. Smell, hearing and vision will come. So this is a general way of understanding a remote sensing system. Now, why do we need a remote sensing system? As a planner, as an architect, landscape architects, or as an environmentalist, why do we need a remote sensing system, right? So we need this over the traditional methods because nowadays we have a lot of data that we require a huge amount of storage, which is not possible by manual records. Number one, it's time consuming. We have to actually physically visit those places in earlier times, right? And to process the manual records, which is again very time consuming. Then there are unfavorable weather conditions, like right now we are already facing some kind of issues, right? Weather conditions, and even you can say this pandemic that we are having, we are not able to move outside of our house, right? So these are the times where we can make use of such kind of a technology. Now some data are obsolete, when we collect the data and when we try to analyze the data, when we structure out the data, it takes a huge amount of time, and by the time we plan to utilize all those data for our analysis, it may turn out to be an obsolete data. So those are all few limitations. Another, if we consider, even as a planner or an environmentalist, that I'm a bit into environment and geology, so I face such kind of issues a lot, like an inaccessible areas. Now I have already some projects in hand, or as a geologist, I at times have to visit mining sites. Even you as a planner have to visit some kind of coastal areas, at times some kind of areas which are inaccessible to you, right? So such kind of areas limit our project analysis. Then there is some kind of gap during the data collection and utilization. That is one another way. Second is biased. Right now, a person goes to collect the data. Like I go to collect the data, I have my own experiences, I have my own understanding about that project or an area. You have your own understanding, or you have your own perspective, right? So we all at times are biased while collecting the data, while understanding and while putting it on paper. We are biased, right? Especially in terms of space, that what we have seen, what we have observed over there, right? So satellite images or spatial technology is very useful in that. And there are economical limitations as well, because it costs a lot. And the field surveys, right? Now these are all our traditional ways of doing the survey, collecting the data, doing the analysis on paper, superimposing the papers, butter papers that we used to, I remember that I used to do superimposing on butter papers at times, transparencies, and used to try to do some kind of a mapping. Now when I was really exposed to this geospatial technology some decade ago, I was really amazed. I actually went to Dehradun to understand this technology. As I was a geologist, I had to do a lot of field work, right? So I thought, this remote sensing, when it was taught to me during the college time, and then actually when I faced all these difficulties during my work period, then I realized that this kind of a technology might be useful, or it would be a great help in doing what I do. So I actually went there and trying to understand what all technologies are there and the faculties that are there, and how it would be helpful in my areas. And then I came to know about the advantages of it. That to simplify it, I have already noted it down, like we now live in a digital world. Same thing goes for geospatial technology. All the data are in digital format, so it's a permanent recording, right? It's a fast data acquisition and the analysis, right? We almost get daily satellite images in terms of weather. If we talk about, we almost get it daily, right? In terms of land observations, we still get it within 2-3 days at times, and daily analysis are also possible in that. But in any case, it's much faster data than the traditional analysis that we used to do. Then the temporal data availability of, it means that it can be of any seasons. It can be of any conditions or any weather conditions. Satellite data are actually capable of recording the data even in a heavy cloud conditions. There are various sensors which can, you can say, are not affected by any kind of dust or haze. So I'll come to that later on, but basically we can get it in any season. And it's a near real-time data, because as soon as we collect the data, I mean, within few days of time, we can start processing it and we can start doing analysis over it. So it's near real-time data that we get to work with. Then we have a synoptic view. Synoptic view is like a nadir view, if you can say, like 90 degree, exactly 90 degree, if you look at it from the top. So orthogonal kind of a thing. So that's kind of a view that we get. So that larger view help us to do a better analysis, or to understand our areas in a much better way than our traditional field surveys. Then it's multidisciplinary. Why multidisciplinary? As we can say, because anyone can make use of this technology. I, being a geologist, I have my own sets of images, which help me find out the geology of the area. Or as an environmentalist that I do, I have a lot of images which I can use for my environment monitoring. You as a planner can make use of a high or ultra high resolution images, even aerial photographs, and you can do your kind of an analysis. And ecologist can have its own sets of images where they can monitor their data sets. And like in wildlife, they can have you can say aerial photographs to monitor the animals as well. So there are lot of various disciplinary uses that we can have. And the best part is we can superimpose all the data in a very fast manner. If it's properly georeferenced, all our data sets, whether you had worked on it, I had worked on it, or some other ecologist or hydrologist has worked on it, right? All our data would be in a proper grid format or a georeference format, and we can easily superimpose it irrespective of the time. Even if someone has done the work 5 years back, we can still directly superimpose it and start working on what with what he has done, right? So it's multidisciplinary and very useful. It's unbiased because it's an image. It's kind of a DNA of an area, right? You cannot change anything by yourself. So it's totally unbiased, and we can easily do our processing and analysis with all different perspectives of a person or a team that are using the same data or same satellite images, and we can make a best use of that data sets. So and we have a unique capability of data recording, as I told you, that we have there is a spectrum of bands, right? I have just kept one slide, will not go deep into it right now, it's a little technical. But in general, if we say that we can see in a visible range of electromagnetic spectrum by our devices or detectors, they have a capacity to detect or record in range beyond our visible sites, like ultraviolet, violet, near infrared, thermal waves, microwaves, radars and all. They can all record some of the other information in their particular spectral range and be very beneficial to our project. And it's a multi-platform in a sense. We can do remote sensing based on a ground platform or through aerial platforms or satellites. There are various platforms. There is one slide for that later on. So now having said that, I ask you one more question. Is photography a type of remote sensing? You can type your questions or answers in the chat. Is photography a type of remote sensing? Right? In general, yes, because we are recording something from a distance with the help of here is the complete electromagnetic spectrum. Here I suppose our circle is not covered. This is our visible range. If my cursor is visible to you, this is our visible range, right? And there are devices which can record beyond that, as mentioned earlier, right? So what all things are getting recorded and in which format, right? So there are in general two different kinds of remote sensing that we use. One is passive remote sensing, where sun is the energy source. We get the radiations from the sun and we take the pictures, right? We had just tried to relate it with photography so that it becomes easier for a normal person or to understand, right? Those of who are new to this field. So in general, when we take pictures during the day, we can relate it with passive remote sensing because sun was our source of light, right? And there is something which is called active remote sensing, right, where we have our own source of light or energy which is backscattered or reflected, and then we record the time and we try to detect the a feature or an object which was there. So this you can relate it something which photographs at night or with flash photography, where we have our own energy of light and we take the photograph, right? There are some conditions where we otherwise during the day it may not be possible, during the night it may not be possible. Now it becomes possible because we have our own light source. So these are some basic ideas behind the use of remote sensing, that how we can utilize this kind of a technology. Now I'll come to one more a little beyond our visible range, which is something which is called multispectral imagery. Now what is multispectral imagery, how it is different from our visible range? Here in multispectral imagery, there is one more band in general. There is one more band included, which is called infrared. There are other ranges of infrared as well. There are near infrared, far infrared, short wave infrared, thermal infrared. There are various bands and ranges of it. But in general, we can say it's near infrared. This is the image which is having a near infrared band, right? So what does this image display? What does this image display? What is the red color? What is the red color? Can anyone guess what is the red color? Now near infrared image is generally very good in detecting the chlorophyll contents, right? The leaves, green leaves in have a very good or high amount of chlorophyll content, which can be recorded by near infrared. So if we may use near infrared band in our remote sensing, we can easily identify an environment and we can easily map it, which otherwise would have been very difficult to map. So here what we have done is that we have shifted one band. We have, instead of our traditional composite, true color composite, which we call it, right, where there is blue, green, and red, which is our visible range as well. So what we do is energy from a near infrared band, and we use the filters. We bring the near infrared data sets to red to green, green to blue, and we shift those bands, spectral bands, and then we try to analyze the image. So because of that, all the vegetations which was recorded in a near infrared band, and since we have used red filter for it, it all turns into red, right? So now it becomes very easier for us to identify all the, agriculture areas, or forest areas, or any other green areas that are there in our maps or our project sites. And we can do the rest of the analysis by easily considering this as a vegetated area and not other lands. Now what if that was not used? I'll give you one more question, right? What can you make out two images? I'm just going to show you two different images, simple one, and you tell me what was the difference that you have observed in these two images. And you can type down your observations in the chat box. And this one, I'll give you some 15-20 seconds to observe it. Just try to see this image, all the corners and everything, that you can understand that what is this area, right? So this is a normal photograph that we collect from an aerial platform, right? This is our true color composite, where everything is as it is. Every color in our image. I'll again give you some 10-15 seconds to observe it properly. Now what can you make out from these two images? This is a false color composite. We call it false color composite because we have assigned false colors to, or a different spectrum bands to RGB. And this is kind of a standard false color composite where we use near infrared band in the red band filter. So this is the second image. I'll put these two images side by side to make it more easier for you to understand it and relate it. Now you try to observe and relate both the images and try to find out what I am trying to or identify. Have you observed what is the difference or where it is not? Right now, since I may not be able to communicate with you straight away, I'll try to show you what I meant. Right now, here you can see this is our natural photograph, right? True color composite. This is our near infrared photograph, right? Now, as you can see, all these vegetations that I was talking about, right, is green over here and we just turned red over here. Why? Because these are natural vegetations. These are having chlorophyll content, good leaves, healthy leaves, and which all can be detected. Now try to observe the stadium. Try to observe this stadium now. This field of a stadium. You see that? It's still green. If it was a grass, right, it should have turned red as well, which has, yes, it implies that this may not be a natural gas, maybe some kind of a synthetic coat, or some kind of a fiber that they have used for the stadium. So this is a simple use how we can use a electromagnetic spectrums, or a range which is beyond our usual range to identify the objects. So this is just one case where we have only used one band to identify or to understand the area better, or even the material. So you as a planner can make use of this, multispectral band in a very different ways. Similarly, there are even beyond this multispectral range. Multispectral range are generally having 5 to 6 or 5 to 7 bands. Now there is some other kinds of remote sensing systems where we can have hyperspectral images. What is hyperspectral images? Hyperspectral images are having like hundreds and hundreds of spectral bands. Here when we had only 5 or 6 band, we were still able to make out like these are the forest area or agriculture area or something else. While hyperspectral, since they are having a huge amount of short spectral bands, we can even identify the kind of species. Like suppose in traditional map, we may be able to identify agriculture. Like in true color composite or normal photograph, we may be able to identify the agriculture fields, or we may get even little confused while mapping the forest area with or tree areas within that particular green fields. But a multispectral band will help us identify that where are the green areas, where are the forest areas. A hyperspectral will help us to detect which kind of trees are there, or which kind of vegetation is there, which kind of agriculture is there. Like if while MSS we identify this is an agriculture area, with hyperspectral we can identify which kind of plants has been sown, so whether it's a bajri, jowar, or cereals, or what kind of plantation has been done or seeding has been done. So that is a little advantage over a traditional photograph that we take. So this is one more. Then we have thermal images. We can even identify this was taken during the earthquake time. I had got it from NAT. Right, so it shows the stress that was there during the time of earthquake, and how the temperature raised, and how it otherwise looked during normal days. So this is something where we can utilize this kind of systems as well. Then there is a microwave system, similar as we discussed about, from short wavelength to long wavelength. There are even longer wavelengths that we can, in meters, that we can utilize. The advantage of microwave system is that the wavelength being very large technologies, and we can get something of this sort of an image, right, where you can see it's a volcano. Normal visible photographs has clouds, remote sensing, where we have our own source of radiations, and we can capture the terrain in its real elevations. So these are all different advantages of remote sensing, where we can utilize this can be all weather data, so you can utilize it in planning also, in a different form. This is just an example, but we have a lot of other ways to utilize such kind of a technology. We are trying to come up with a good spatial resolutions for such kind of a technology as well, whereby we can utilize in all planning and all different environment areas as well. So there is one more technology which probably you might be aware of. This is called light detecting and ranging, similar to radar, but in general we'll not go into technicalities, but you can simply say that we can get an elevation data. If you want urban area to map with an elevation, LiDAR can directly give you a 3D model, and you don't have to do any kind of a survey, right? Any physical survey is not required. We just have to flow over the area with a LiDAR sensor over it, and we can directly get 3D image of the area, and then we can utilize it for our urban planning or landscape architecture. So now those of you who are new or who are not much into technology, I would just it's a rumor, rather I would put it still as a rumor, right? But even iPhone 12, it is been said that iPhone 12 will come out with a lidar sensor, but of course the range of the remote sensing or the professional lidar that we are talking about right now, and the range of that iPhone lidar might be different. It might be recording a with few meters only, but it still would be very useful for 3D photography and various other uses for finding out the distances and measurements, and it can be a very good tool. I mean, the phone could be used as a tool afterwards, uh, so it is kind of a replacement of our traditional measuring instrument, so the technology is growing so fast, so lidar is something very useful for urban planners and architects. Similarly, I'll come to that later on, but even drones nowadays has this kind of a technology and similar kind of a technology whereby they use RGB clouds. I'll come to that later on. So now when we talk about Indian imaging capabilities, initially when we started out in 1975, 76, with Aryabhatta, and then later on, we improved on our spatial is from where the least a linear image self scanner, that is called list sensors came into being. List 1, then 36, list 2, 23 is list 3, it's 23.5 I believe, and 5.8 or 5 you can say as a list 4, which is even used right now, this particular range in various applications from even in planning. And then came this 1 meter or sub-meter resolution. These are Cartosat images, and I mean, I really feel proud to inform you that we have one of the most powerful spatial resolution sensor in the world, which we had just recently launched last year, that is Cartosat 3. I believe that has a spatial resolution of 0.25 meters, or you can say 25 centimeters. It was just released I suppose in 2019 November only, I believe. So it is it's a great achievement for ISRO, and you can see how good the images look, and these are taken from satellites. So it's wonderful, and you can, or rather anyone can utilize this kind of an images in any discipline, whether it's planner or environmentalist, we can make use of great things. Soon, though the images are limited right now because it's just a recent launch, the images are still coming out, and probably within 1 or 2 years we might be able to collect most of the images for India. So that is a very good thing. So as we talked about platforms, we already discussed about satellite images, aerial photographs, and we have drone that is coming up, and we'll come on that later on. Then there is ground-based remote sensing as well. One that we discussed out was a photography, which used to take some horizontal or vertical photographs. One such more category is called ground penetrating radar, or GPR. We use a lot of this technology in geology or to whether map subsurface utilities. You as a planner can also make use of this technology, subsurface utilities mapping, like where are the cables, where are the pipes, to design, because at times it may not be possible. We plan that here it has to be road or canal or something like that, but below it there might be some kind of a cable net, change our plans even just before wires, so but still it's important to understand those things. So this is one another kind of a remote sensing for subsurface utility mapping. So this is one another form. So there are, see, as you can see, there are various forms of utilities category for it. And then we come to a technology which everyone uses in our daily life, everyone is aware about it, and probably everyone has become an expert over it, right? That is called Global Navigation Satellite System. Can anyone tell me what is how it's famous, right? We it has become a synonymous word with GNSS. It's just like we can say a Xerox. We all know that it's a photocopy. The term is photography, but Xerox is a company. But since it was the first one and it's widely used, we all use the term Xerox instead of photocopy. Similarly, GPS, since it was one of the first constellation by US government, real term is Global Navigation Satellite System. So similarly, like GPS, uh, many countries have their own satellite constellations. Now I'll give you again some 10 seconds to identify these satellite constellations are from which countries. Can anyone type down what is Beidou? Which country has Beidou? Probably everyone would have guessed it right. It's China. Then GPS, it's America. IRNSS, Gagan, India, of course. Then Russian GLONASS, QZSS is from Japan, and Galileo from European Union. So every country has their own constellation of satellites, and we all utilize these systems in our GPS or in our GNSS systems, in our mobile systems. Now, since you're familiar with the term, you can check your mobile phones later on to see which constellations are there, or your chipset can handle which kind of constellations. Beidou's probably GPS definitely would. You may even get QZSS, and Gagan doesn't really come right now, but the recent advance is there that they have started preparing mobile chipsets for Gagan as well. GLONASS and Galileo. GLONASS will also be found out probably. You can check your mobile systems later on that which area has a powerful satellite range coming from which constellations. So now when we talk about global navigation systems, first thing that comes to our mind is roads, the routes. We all mostly use it to find out either shortest route or optimal route to reach some or the other, but can be utilized for, or is been utilized. That is location to determine a perfect an accurate position. Then for navigation that we usually do from one location to another. Then even tracking, nowadays we all know that Google supports even tracking of people. Once we give the permission, you can track your family members or friends or whosoever has given your permissions. I use it. I generally ask all of them to keep their mobile sets, or rather I give them a separate mobile sets because battery would be draining a lot when you start a GPS system or GNSS system, right? But then I keep them, ask them to keep them on all the time so that I can know their exact location. These tracking systems are utilized in, you can say, in your planning. If we talk about these tracking systems are being used in your automobile systems, some of them paid auto services, like Meru and other cabs that are there. So tracking can be done through these systems. Then of course mapping can be done while we go during the field, and it also brings a precise time into the world. There are atomic clocks installed in those systems. So there are all other various functions of GNSS for helping us out, make our lives easier. Now, just to make you familiar, for those of you who has not used GPS in form of a maps, so uh, apart from those kind of an interfaces, if you talk about like professional or kind of semi-professional GPS systems, uh, you will get this kind of a display. You will have pages. Even in your mobile sets, there are a lot of softwares that you can install, which can be used for your surveying. And uh, even the accuracy would be as good as 3 meters to 5 meters in like normal that we get it through our uh, semi-pro GPS systems like Garmin and Magellan and all the others. The accuracy may not very much, but in fact you can utilize your cameras and other you can say high-end processors for doing the survey. So you can actually use your mobile phones as survey instruments. If 3-meter accuracy or 2-meter accuracy is good enough for you, or 5-meter accuracy is good enough for you, and the best part is that since maps are there, this Google Maps and Apple Maps are already so high resolution maps that you can actually do a post processing simply by clicking a point. If there is a shift in the location, you can simply point and inform the maps that that I'm not in this location, but I'm precisely standing somewhere at the edge of the gate, or of this particular building. And we can do some kind of post processing and rectify those errors. So we can use some kind of a post processing in mobiles straight away. Pages that we see, that we can have a compass, right, which will give you the directions and angles. Then as in with all the other softwares, we'll have some kind of a menu systems which will have buttons for tracking and routing, and some setups and proximity sensors, and hunt and fish and calculators and all those things. And this is very important. This will give you that, show you the by your device. So this will give you the strength, and this will give you the locations. It has to be properly connected in all the directions from the center. Like if there is a cursor from the center, it has to show the satellites that has been collected in all the angles, which will give, which would be good, I mean, for getting a better accuracy. So if that is there, then it's very good, because other satellites are blocked by either a building or some kind of a structure, then you may have more error than 3 to 5 meters. That is usually we are getting from such kind of a devices. So you need to consider this, all these factors before using your GPS as a survey instrument. You have to understand these small things to get a very good locations before marking the waypoints or having a route. Similarly, we can also have a terrain, right? We can inbuilt terrain models that are there. DEM general, like in technical terms, we call it digital elevation models. So those contours that as a planner you might be knowing is as topographical surveys. Topography of an area. These contours can be generated again from satellite images as well. There are special satellite images meant for finding out the elevation or mapping the elevations. Some form of regular maps, like again Google Maps, or other maps, normal maps. And then there is this customized box where we can this can be customized, where we can know whether we want to check the elevations or number of satellites that has been connected, or the latitude and longitude, or from this screen. So these are all information that we can shift the pages to check what you want to see. So these are for basic software. And now we talk about the technology in general. Go deep into all these things, right? But in general, it has GNSS, or other this system comprises of three segments. One is the space segment, like satellites from where we receive the data. Then one is the control segment, where we have master control stations, monitoring stations, ground antenna, which rectify the errors that are coming from the satellite systems. And then there is
Excuse me, sir.
user segment. Those of you who didn't got the last slide, I'm just show you the image, that these are all the pages that you can go through while having some kind of a professional grade software installed, either in your mobile devices or your GPS systems, if you have special GPS systems. Now I'll just try to inform you as a planner, since you all might want to do the surveying through your mobiles, because not everyone wants to purchase a special GPS for it, right? And in fact, you don't really require to purchase special GPS systems for it nowadays, since we have a very good chipsets even in our mobile systems, right? You can just simply install a very good software. I'm not naming it right now because I don't want to market it, but there are very good software available which are as good as your pro systems. And in fact, your mobiles can turn out to be an even better GPS systems with the same amount of accuracy, of course, of 3 to 5 meters or worse. But you can get a very good camera now. You have 48 megapixels of camera, very high-end processor. You have a high-end mobile systems around, and you can utilize those things. You can actually mark, you can actually digitize the route, and you can do all those surveyings, or even geotag your photos, properly, and you can use it in your planning or landscape architecture. Okay, yeah. So there are three segments of GNSS: space segment, user segments, and control segments. Now these are normal GPS systems. But when we talk about surveying, like if you as a planner or architect, you require a very high precision system, not a usual GPS with 3 to 5 meters of error. You have to have an error in a scale of millimeters. So that is where comes the differential GPS, DGPS, or famously, those of you who are architects or planner might have used total stations, right? So this is similar to to a total. You can compare it to a total station, whereby total station again, uses an arbitrary 00 coordinates, and then you do the mapping through that, and you may also have a reflector less total station. Right here we have a very advanced system from Leica GS18T. You can have a distometer in that controller, and you can, through laser, you can simply mark without going to a particular place, same like a reflectorless total station, and do the mapping. And it has the benefit of such kind of an advanced system, especially from a company like Leica, is that they have came up with a new technology called IMU, inertial measurement unit. So even if it's tilted, it doesn't really matter. It will still take a very good reading or the coordinates. This was generally, since we are short of time, I generally try to explain how it has been, the error gets rectified. If we have a known coordinates like X and Y, and we get some coordinates from the satellite X plus Y, or some different Y minus 3 or something, we can send those corrections, and we the rover from where we are collecting the data, we can consider those figures and rectify, and this is how it brings down from error from 3 meters to even millimeter. Generally it's told that your horizontal or x and y coordinates comes out to be an 0.08 meters, and the vertical resolution is 0.015 meters, so which is good. Similar, there are another technologies, wide area augmentation systems for flight control systems. Now I'll just I'll just show you how the data has been collected in nowadays, then, and how it was collected during the traditional time. Now here we say consider some project that we use for urban planning or landscape architecture, that we all require a coordinate. We all might require or definitely require a topo sheet to start our project with, right? So we map everything on topo sheet first of all. It's one of the like high precision data that we can get from our Survey of India. Then we have to have a village map or DILR maps, site locations. Probably the project proponent will give satellite images, government approved maps, some base maps that government has it installed, photographs, land use maps, prepared from satellite images, some drainage patterns, other thematic maps, data analysis. Now this probably we can cover in land use lecture as well. There are a lot of online data sources. Now before that, before starting this, I just request Ashwin bhai that if we are really short of time, can we take this in the land use lecture, because there are few more slides. Yeah, hello.
So
Ashwin sir?
you can finish it. Then we will have altogether different topic, that is land use. So I think so we have to tell the participants that that land use part will be purely on land use only, because most of our students now in urban and earlier one also, they have this land use. They know the meaning. What is the land use?
Okay.
As you feel, if you want to take these slides into next lecture, I'll leave it to you.
Land use again has few slides, because I had just tried to put on some kind of a model or a flow chart that we can use it for environment modeling or impact assessments and all. But in any case, this we can consider it right now. I'll just go a little quick, since in any case you are recording, you will get to know what online sources are. These are all informative slides. There's nothing much to explain in these slides. I just wanted to inform all the participants that from where you can get the data free of cost, and which are very good, and we use it in our professional projects as well. These are very good sources, and I have tried to compare it over a period of time and try to even utilize in all of my projects. So I'll just show you one slide. You can either note it down or refer to it later on for this data sources. Like, as you talked about, that we require a lot of different varieties of data sets for our projects, right? So where can we get, and what kind of a data set that we can get, right? You can explore, because there are various other data that can be available from the same sites. I have not mentioned everything. I've just presented one slide for your reference. Like Survey of India, TopoHit, we all generally used to go to, like those of you are in Gujarat, we used to go to Gandhinagar and go to Survey of India and collect it from the Survey of India in a physical format. Now Survey of India has an online platform, that is soinakshe.uk.gov.in. There you can just enter your Aadhaar number and you can download all those topo sheets free of cost. The only difference is that they might have a little watermark, but that doesn't really matter to us, right? So this is a very good site, and this has been just recently launched. I mean, at least I know about it in the last 1 or 2 years, right? So this is wonderful site for you to download all the topo sheets. You can explore what all things are there. You can download it through numbers or area. Then this actually is a part of can be a part of land use also. That NNRMS is kind of you can say a bible for land use. We'll take up a little in land use lecture as well. But NNRMS, you can get something out of it related to natural resource management. Then this is the site. Now this I want everyone to registering your brains that this is the site from where all the data related to satellite images can be procured, right? Either free of cost or through you can say money, right? So this is an user operating UOPS, user order processing system. This is NRSC site, National Remote Sensing Center, located at Hyderabad, Balanagar. Uh, and here you will have to initially register your ID. You will get a login ID and password, and then you have to have a little understanding of satellite images, right? Or the authorities over there, are so helpful that even if you will simply give them your area, they will try to process for you, find out the best images for you in no time. So I usually get it within 1 or 2 days if in case I face some kind of a difficulty in finding the images that I am not able to do online from my end, right? But otherwise, if you have a good knowledge about satellite images, everything is there. Hardly 1 or 2 satellite images that are of Cartosat, which are not online, and for which you will have to ask them to process it for you or find it out for you. But otherwise, most of the images you can find it out yourself for all your projects. So this is you can say prime site for you. Then this is also a very important site. This US Geological Survey, USGS. They have various you can say online platforms for downloading the data sets free of cost, but one that I particularly use or I like is Earth Explorer. Here you can find all the data sets of freely available satellite images from Landsat or SRTM or Aster or Sentinel. There are various kinds of satellite sensors which are free of cost and which are very good, and you can still use it in your professional projects. You can all download it from USGS site. It's a wonderful site and very easy for anyone to start using it. So I would also want you to note this down. Then this is probably a commercial site. These are subscription based. I don't want to do much of a discussion on it, but Earth Observation System who wants to do crop monitoring, they can do it, or they can purchase it. This I have just simply mentioned because I actually wanted to mention one more slide, which is an Indian slide site, which is far better and free of cost. So anyone who wants to do a crop monitoring or on the fly or online analysis of satellite images, you can do it. You can subscribe, get the subscription, pay some amount, and you can do it. But we have our own platform for crop monitoring, which is wonderful, and I like it far beyond any other online analysis system. That is called Vedas, visualization of Earth observation data and archival system. This has been developed by Dr. Shashikant Sharma from ISRO. Probably I would request Ashwin sir, he's a very nice person and he'll be happy to deliver a lecture on Vedas. We usually do.
Next,
right?
I think so. We'll ask him.
And this is useful for everyone. I mean, everyone. It's worth hearing to what he has to inform us. So Vedas is also very wonderful and totally free of cost. The same thing which you had to subscribe. Only difference which I had found right now is that that the commercial sites, they have a direct crop that you can do the analysis on right now, and that particular part in this Vedas platform is under development. Like if you want to directly do the analysis on or you can say jowar or bajri, you can simply have that drop down and select jowar or bajri or pulses or cereals and do the analysis. Here apparently it's under development, but still there is a lot of wonderful tools far beyond the other commercial sites which can be used for analysis in agriculture field or even urban. Uh, then we have our own sites, Bhuvan, right? There are a lot of thematic services that they provide, a lot of thematic maps that are there, which is a wonderful site. Bhuvan, you can again have a special lecture delivered by the technicians or experts from Bhuvan. Uh, and you can yourself learn, it's very easy. This is Bhuvan 3D. This is similar kind of a platform to your well-known Google Earth. We all know Google Earth, right? We have our own platform, Bhuvan, for same. And those of you who doesn't know that there are similar other, platforms as well. There is one by NASA. This is again a very good site and very smooth, nicely designed site. This is World Explorer, right, from NASA, which provides the focuses on the images provided by either some commercial and some US satellite system. So this is again a very good software you can download, and you can do some kind of some kind of an analysis at your end. Download, you all know Google Earth, right? You can download Google Earth software, you can download Worldwind software, you can download Bhuvan Earth software. You can find out what are advantages of all these different tools that you have. It's a wonderful exercise. You will get to know that so many people beyond Google Earth still have wonderful tools. There are, again, go a little fast. There are maps generated by World Bank. These I actually got it from one of the seminar that I attended, which was done by UN experts. Then you have international charters for space and major disaster. That they have different varieties of maps related to disasters or ongoing, some kind of an calamities, natural calamities. Then there are other, software, other areas where you can download differential GPS kind of thing, like 5 centimeters, or rather you can say less than 10 centimeters, which I had earlier known, right? Now what I had seen at this night was 5 centimeters, but I knew it as sub 10 centimeters. But these are globally available differential GPS data sets from NASA. Right, this has been utilized by commercial people as well for their smart agriculture farming. Like here that you can see tractors, and there are some companies which are utilizing these services even right now. So global DGPS systems are also available, which not many people know or probably have their doubts, but it's still a great data set that you can get it from NASA. Similarly, freely available data source platforms are also available. I've just categorized or mentioned 5 such data sets that are available online free of cost. One is our own Cartosat 1. Another which are available from USGS platforms is SRTM, that is Sun Shuttle Radar Topographic Mission, Aster, JAXA, LIDAR. Mars Orbital Laser Altimeters are also there from US Astrogeological Center. So there are all different sites from where you can download different kinds of digital elevation models, as per your project requirements or needs. So they are all very good. These are all upcoming trends. Probably we can skip if the time. We can take this from here forward in land use as well, because drone surveying might be related to your land use as well. But if we can continue, there is this drone survey systems, or you can say a policy that we have it in India, which restricts the use of regular drones that we used to have, especially Chinese ones coming from DJI, which again, of course, it's a good company. But then the thing is that these are not been accounted, and Indian government doesn't know who owns it, and a lot of there are chances that it can be misused. And drone, as we all know that how risky it is if it is not controlled. So we have you can say a policy now framed which restricts the use of drone without the permission of the government or DGCA rather. So we can either continue if Ashwin sir, you tell me, or we can continue it during the land use lecture. Hello, sir. Yeah.
Hello. So we can continue it in the landscape.
You can continue.
Ashwin sir is facing some network issue, I guess. He will return.
Okay, so we'll take up
Few
this
seconds.
is actually a very good information that you would like to know as a land you can say urban planners, because drone is I mean you can say it's a high end, ultra high and high resolution set images, and which is very useful for your urban planning or landscape planning, but we'll take up during the land use lecture. Yeah, so we can close from here.
Yes, thanks, Dr. Nezar Lakhia, for your today's very informative lecture.
Yeah.
With this, I think so. I'll give you votes of thanks. Uh, I can first thank our Professor Taha Padawala to organize this series with excellent poster and also communication and creating a platform for all of us, and spreading the poster to all students and professionals. I also thank my college trustees, Chairman Shri Bhaskar Bhai Patel. I thank the trustees of NEST. Uh, I also thank Principal Professor Sailesh Nair. I also thank other students who have worked really hard to make this webinars a success. And I think so. We'll keep this question answer session at end of the series, so students can keep on understanding, because also next part they can get the answer. But if they have more questions, we will continue. Already it has taken a lot of time in today's session. So if we keep a question answer session, it will prolong more. So thank you, Nezar, and thank you everybody who have participated. It was a great privilege for me to keep this kind of a lecture, and in future, that is the next part will be on 20th. So everybody should remain in touch, and if you have any question, you can ask personally also to me and to sir, and then we will forward it to Dr. Nezar Lakhia. Thank you, everybody. Sir, will you join and give your...
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Thank you, sir,
So-
for.
You will
Yeah.
continue with that, and then we'll call it a day today. Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Definitely, we'll at the end of this land use, probably there would be little more information and little more questions that people might want to ask, on land use and impact assessment. That maybe later on we can have a special session on question answers at the end of the series as well. Thank you
Yeah,
for
there
having
are
me, sir.
several questions in a chat room. Very, and they were inquisitive about various things regarding GIS. So they have put the questions like, so we will try to answer them through you.
Yeah, sure. What you can do, you can mail me all the questions. If in case we fall short of time, you can mail me all the questions, and probably I can reply back through mail as well as in the next session. Definitely, as and when the time permits, we'll definitely go through all those questions. But otherwise, if something is left out, or maybe we are not able to cover the questions of some participants, you can definitely they can call me up, or you can call you, and you can manage.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir, I think so. We'll.
Yes, sir. We'll call it a day, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your knowledge.
Thank you for inviting.